Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. So in this video, I will go over the solution of the final mock exam for Computer Programming 1. I'll be using both NetBeans and Moodle exam to show you how to solve it. Some of the questions in the exam are going to be multiple choice questions, which means you need to pick the most appropriate answer for those. And the remaining questions will be code runner questions where you need to write code or fix already given code to you. So let's start with the first one. The first question is, which of the following is an invalid way to instantiate a string object? Among these 5 or 4 lines of code, which one is going to be invalid? One way of solving these kind of questions is that you copy all the lines of code, paste them in NetBeans, and see wherever you get an error. That would be the invalid one. In case you don't get any error in this case, the correct answer would be all of the above are valid. But you need to know by now, you should know actually, that string is a class, which means you can either create a string object by directly assigning a value using the double quotation marks, or you can use the new operator and then assign the value using the string constructor. I mean, that is in more depth, but this is one of the ways you can use to create the string object, and the other one is directly assigning the value. You can even keep it empty. That's also correct. There's nothing invalid there. And the same thing can happen with the new string double quotation. So if you even test this out in NetBeans, all of them would be correct. And so the correct answer for this one would be all of the above are valid. Now, in the second question, you are supposed to look at this piece of code here and figure out which line has the maximum number of errors in it. Okay, if you take a look again, you can do the same thing, copy the code, paste it in NetBeans, remove the extra text, like for example the numbering, you can remove that, and then see wherever you get an error. But the correct way of figuring it out would be to, look at it, and you should be able to identify errors by just looking at the code. So the first line has, I think, 2 errors. The first one is that the C for class is capital, which shouldn't be the case. It should be the small letter C because Java is case sensitive. And the next error is that there is a space here after Y. There's a space between my example. If you remember, you cannot use any name that you create. For example, if you name a class or a variable or an object or a method, it cannot contain spaces. So that's the second error. The first line has 2 errors. The second line is correct. There are no errors. The fifth line, or sorry, the third line here has 1 error. It's the capital letter M. Again, case sensitive. When you run the program, the compiler or the software or the compiler basically, it looks for the main method with a small m. And here you've created it with a capital M, which is incorrect. So the third line has 1 error. The fourth line has no errors. It's all correct. The fifth line has also 1 error. It's this operator here. This is not valid in Java. This operator doesn't work in Java. Here it should have been not equal to, which is an exclamation mark, and equal to sign. So that's the only error here. The sixth line, there's a missing semicolon. So that's another error. And line 7 and 8 don't have any errors. So in this case, the maximum number of errors are on line 1 because it has 2 errors. So the correct answer here is 1. For the third question, it says, in order to make a variable a constant, which modifier must be included in its declaration. So if you want to create a variable, but you don't want to allow the value stored in that variable to be changed, you can create it as a constant. And when you want to create a constant variable, you should have, or you should be using the final keyword. The others are incorrect. The correct answer will be final. This is something you need to remember. Okay. Question number 4 says, look at the code snippet below and decide which of the choices listed best fill the gaps in the first comment describing the purpose of the entire method. So you need to look at the method and you need to find two words that will fit best in these two gaps here. Okay. It says a method that takes a parameter dash and dash a boolean whether the file exists. Okay. If we look at the code, we know public static is what you use to create a method. The third word is usually the return type. Okay, in this case it's written boolean. So this means here boolean is basically a return type. So the word here would be returns a boolean whether the file exists. So that means the answer could be either A or it could be D. Okay, now let's look at the entire code and see which one is the correct answer for the first one. So here we're taking the name of the method is get file info. We're taking a parameter of type string and the name of it is path. And then we're creating a file object which is nothing by providing the path of the file. So when you write new file path, you're basically providing the path where that file is stored to the file object, and it kind of figures out how to get that file. So in this case, path is nothing but the file path, right? So, and path basically is also the parameter. So the best option here would be file path, because it would make sense when you read it like this: a method that takes a parameter file path and returns a boolean whether the file exists. Okay, because we have the word file in the context. If the first word is file path, it would make more sense. It can be a variable as well, but the most suitable answer in this case is file path, because the variable is actually the path of the file, right? So the correct answer is D. Okay, next. Okay, write a method find direction that takes a character direction as a parameter and returns the corresponding name of the direction. Hint: N is north, S is south, E is east, and W is west. Note, you must use a switch statement with the minimum number of lines possible. You must consider both capital and small letters, and you must return invalid direction if the parameter passed is not a valid direction. Your requirements are you must have comments and your code must be as efficient as possible. So the method signature is already given to you. You don't need to figure out all of that. All you need to do is whatever character is passed to you, you need to figure out which character it is and accordingly return either north, south, or east or west, or invalid direction if it's not a valid character. So in this case, they also want you to use the switch statement. So the first thing you would do is write the switch statement. When we write the switch statement, we're supposed to pass the variable we're looking at. Okay, so a switch statement just takes the value of the variable and tries to match it with different cases, and whichever case is matched, it then executes a set of instructions or set of code for it before exiting. So here you need to write direction, because that is the variable that we're going to look at, which is basically the parameter in this case. So switch direction case n, and then case n. Actually, case first let's do all for the capital letters. So north, south, east, west. Okay, so this character can either, now because it's a character, that's the only reason we're using single quotes. If it was a string, you would use double quotes. If it's a number, you will not use any code, any quotes. So in this case, if the character was capital N, we're supposed to return north. Okay, because the question says returns the corresponding name of the direction. So if it's capital N, the name of that direction basically is north. So you are supposed to just write return north. That's it. If it was S, you are supposed to write return south. If it was east, you're supposed to write return east. And then if it was W, return west. Okay, that solves for the capital letters. So the capital N, S, E, W is done. But we also need to consider the small letters. For example, here, small letter E was passed. So even in this case, it should return for me the name of the direction. So what you can do is just add the other cases with the similar cases. So small n before capital N, small s before capital S, small e before capital E, and then small w before capital W. Okay, what this means is, if this was the direction, or if this was the character stored in the direction variable, it will see, okay, this is the matched case. Well, there is nothing next to it here, like it's empty. So it will move to the next line and execute whatever is written there. Okay, the similar case here, if it was small s, there's nothing written after the colon. So what it's going to do is it's going to move to the next one without testing it again and execute whatever is written here. Okay, and finally, we're missing one case where if none of the cases were correct, it should return invalid direction. In this case, you can write default. This means if none of the cases were matched, by default, just return invalid direction. So let's pre-check. Okay, the problem here is I didn't put comments. So you can just write comments north, south, east, west, invalid. Pre-check. Okay, now it's correct. Check. Now it's working correctly. So all you need to remember is when you want to check something, you can use switch statement. Whatever variable you need to check should be written here, and then the different cases that you're checking for should be written using the case keyword. If you write a case and there's nothing next to it, and if this case is matched, what happens is the execution moves to the next line, and whatever is written on the next case or the next line will be executed. Okay, and this is how you can do for multiple cases. In this case, we have multiple cases that we can match against one direction. So this is one way of writing it. You could even write it this way. Just repeat the return statements. That's also fine, but this is more efficient. Okay, the next question is, okay, write a method power that takes two integers as parameter and returns the value of the first number raised to the power of the second number. For example, 2 to the power 5 will return 2 to the power 5, which is equal to 32. You cannot use the math method from the math class. And for simplicity, you should only check for positive numbers. If the number is not positive, then just return -1. Okay, so let's do for the check first. So that's easy. We just need to check if both the numbers that are as parameters that are given to us, if both of them are positive, only then we should execute the other code. Otherwise, you just send or just return -1. So here you can just write if base is let's say less than 0, or power is less than 0. If the base, the value in the base variable is less than 0, or if the value in the power variable is less than 0, just return -1. Okay, that means if it is invalid in the beginning itself, it will return. We don't have to worry about it later on. If it, you don't even need to write else here. You can just keep writing your code. What is going to happen is if this was invalid, meaning if any of the numbers were less than 0, it will just return -1, and you don't have to worry about the other code. By this line, it will already be out of the method. So if that is solved, then we need to make sure that the number that we're given, the base, is raised to the power of power. So if this is 2 and this is 5, in this case, let's say base is 2 and power is 5, you need to calculate 2 times 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whatever this gives you as an answer, that's the final answer that you need to return. Okay, in this case it's 32. So base is, again, if you notice the pattern here, the number that is given to you as base is being repeatedly multiplied with the previous result. So 2 into 2 is 4, right? That result is multiplied with another 2. And then the answer here would be 8. That result is multiplied with another 2. And so on and so forth. So basically there's a repetition. For that you can write for int I is equal to 0. So you start from 0 and then you write I should be less than power, because you need to repeat, if power is 5, you're repeating the multiplication 5 times here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're repeating it 5 times. It should be less, I should be less than power, not equal to, because we're starting from 0. If it were starting from 1, then it was fine, but otherwise it should be less than 0. Semicolon and then plus plus I. Okay, and now if you notice here 2 into 2 is 4, right? That result you need to store somewhere, so the next time you are multiplying it, you have the previous result. So 2 into 2 is 4, store that somewhere, and then next time multiply that with another 2, again store it in the same variable, and keep on the multiplication, keep repeating the multiplication. So here I'll create a variable for that, int result is equal to 1, because in multiplication, if anything is 0, the whole result will be 0. So that's why the first number should be 1. So result should be equal to result times base, because we're repeating the base, right? We're repeating the base number, but we need to store the previous result. So result is equal to result into base. So 1 into 2 will be 2. That will be stored in result. Next time 2 into 2. That will be stored in result, which is 4. The next time 4 into 2, which is 8. Again, store in result. So that will keep repeating until we end the number of power. After that, you just return result. Okay, so let's see if it works. Okay, the pre-check is okay, and then the check. Okay, that's how you do it. You just keep repeating and and what you do is you store it in a variable and then keep multiplying it with the same variable. So that is done. Okay, so for the next question, for this question we need a bit of understanding on how this needs to be done. Here you need to create a method called sum of pairs that basically takes a parameter, which is an array of integers, which is an array of numbers, and it returns the number of occurrences of any two values that equals to 15. So for example, in this array, the two values that add up to 15 occur 3 times. So basically you would return the number 3, and those 3 basically pair of numbers that give you 15 are 13 plus 2, which is here. 13 plus 2 gives you 15. 14 plus 1 gives you 15. And 17 minus 2 gives you 15. So these are all the numbers that basically give you 15. They add up to 15. So you need to figure out the same. How many pair of numbers within this array, when you add them together, will give you 15. Okay. Now, how are we going to do this? Let's try to draw it out first. So it basically, so you can visualize it. If, for example, if this was the array here, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there is 1, there is 13, 2, 14, minus 2, 17. Okay? How are we going to figure out that the sum of two numbers will give you 14? Oh, sorry, 15. So in this case, we will do nested loops. Okay? One loop, we will keep it as a pointer here. Okay? So let's have it, let's name it I. I will keep it at the 0 index. Okay, the next pointer I will start from the second index, or the second position, or the first index. Okay, and let's name this J. Okay, this will be this I here is basically the outer loop, and this one is the inner loop. So what is going to happen? First, I will keep my pointer here for I will keep it here. Okay, and then I will keep moving J. So I'll say, okay, right now J is at 1. So the value here is 13, right? So is 13 plus 1 15? No. So if that's the case, move to the next one here. Is 2 plus 1 15? No. Again, move to the next one. Is 14 plus 1 15? No. Move to the next one. No, sorry, my bad. 14 plus 1 is 15. So that is correct. So you can store your counter in another variable. I will name it, let's say, count, and here I will increment it to 2. Okay, 14 plus 1 will give me 15. Now minus 2 here, minus 2 plus 1 will not give me 15, so I will move to the next one again. 17 plus 1 is 18, not 15. So again, it's done. Now, for the next time, what I'm going to do is I will move I here, okay, and I will keep J here and do the same thing. 2 plus 13, it is 15, so change count to 2. Move this J to 3. So 14 plus 13, no, it's not 15. Move to the next one. 13 minus 2 is 15, no. 13 minus 2 is actually 15, so no, it's not, sorry, it's minus 2. So this will stay as 2. And then move to 17. 17 plus 13 is not 15. So again, we're done and we didn't find any more pairs. So again, you will change all of that. You will move I to this position and J will be on the next position, and then you will keep checking until the end of the array. Now, if you notice, there's a pattern here. The pattern is that whenever I would, for whichever value of I you choose, J is always I plus 1, right? It's not starting from 0, it's not starting from any other place. J is always starting from the index where I is, but the index next to it. So meaning if I is at 2, J is starting at 3. If I was 3, J was starting at 4. So that's a pattern. And J is going to go until the end of the array. Okay, but I will not go until the end of the array. The index I cannot go to the end of the array, because if it goes to the end of the array, which is here, J should be I plus 1, right? So we don't have any variable after 5. So that will give you an error. So there are two conditions here. I will start from 0. It will go until the size of the array, which is length minus 1, and J always starts from I plus 1, and it will go till the end of the array. Okay, these are the two conditions you will use. Now let's try to write them in code and see how they're going to work. Now going back, if you remember, we created a counter. I'm going to assign it 0 initially, and that's the same counter you're going to return at the end. So return count. Okay, between this you need to write your code. The first loop, we said I is always going to start from 0. It's always going to be less than the numbers array. This is the array that they gave us. Numbers dot length, and it's always going to be less than the numbers dot length, but minus 1, because it's not going to go until the end. Otherwise, J will go outside of the array. And I plus plus. Okay. Every time there is a repetition of I, we need to start a repetition of J. So int J is equal to I plus 1. Remember, it's going to start from the next index. That's the index that's next to I. Okay, and then J is less than numbers dot length and plus plus J. And every time we are checking if the number that is stored in I is it, if you add it to number that is stored in J, is it equal to 15? If it is equal to 15, you increment the counter, or you can say count is equal to count plus 1, whichever way. and that should be it. There's one thing that says you must define any number literals as constant. So here number literals mean anywhere that you're writing a number in any condition. So this is a condition, and here we are directly writing a number. So I will just replace that with, let's say, result, and because it's going to be final, it should be capital letters, and it will be final int result is equal to 15. Okay, pre-check. Okay, there is a code, comment, all of that. Okay, so this is used for literal. This is used for counting, counter basically. Outer loop, inner loop. I don't like writing comments if you cannot already tell. But yeah, anyway. Okay, so the pre-check is correct and the check is also correct. So that's it. Just remember that when you are practicing all of this, just remember that you can only get better at this if you practice. You cannot memorize all of this. It's very difficult to memorize. You can only become good at it as if you are practicing it as many times as you possibly can. That's the only way to learning programming. There's no other shortcut available for this. So practice this as many times as you can. It's not that you just do these questions one time. It will never be of any benefit to you. Keep doing them. Try to find out different ways of doing them. Maybe you can find out codes that are simpler or shorter than what I showed you. So in those cases as well, it will help you to learn better. And I hope the exam goes well for you. All the very best, and thank you for watching.